Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Coleman. Joining me right now is Max Cohen. This is our full-time show of Fulham's 1-1 draw against Manchester United at Craven Cottage. The match just ended, and Max and I are just going to be sharing our initial reaction for probably about a half hour. If you are watching live with us, please feel free to share any comment that you have. Also, please feel free to share who was your man of the match. That's how we'll end this episode of Cottage Talk full time. Mr. Cohen, we have a lot to talk about, but let's start from the get-go. Just give me your initial reaction to what you just watched.
I think we should have won, frankly. I mean, that's the impression I have of the 90 minutes in total, which we watched. United started out very, very strong first 10 minutes. Cunha, always dangerous. Yep. Can't name a single thing he did the rest of the match. They got a joke of a penalty, which never should have been a penalty, and thankfully missed it. Bruno was honestly, that was hilarious how he let the ref get in his head and then decide to put in Rosed. And then I think the goal, we can talk about that later. Lenny Yoro, very clearly, two hands on the back of Calvin Bassey. And we talk about refereeing, we talk about consistency, Russ. If you want to be consistent, VAR should rule that goal out and say no goal. But I think the way Fulham responded was superb. Smith Rowe, we've been in this podcast a lot of times and criticized him. Great introduction. He made a difference, and I'm really impressed. I think Josh King has almost motivated him to become a better player and said, I'm going to be the best I can be. And the final 50 minutes of the match, only Fulham were the team that was going to get the winner. Let's be honest.
That's right.
And I think Kenny Tete, I want to single him out, was superb, got into great positions. The final ball, just lacking. If he has a bit more composure as he gets to the byline, I think we could have got one more, if even two more goals, because I thought we were that good. So I'm sitting here pleased that we didn't lose a match, but also a little bit rueful that it was only a draw because, again, we're in the United States. We hear about United all the time. The team, in my opinion, is a joke, and all the coverage dedicated to them is a joke. And I think the way they played today was a joke. Everyone's going to talk about United. They were so incredibly unimpressive. And Bumo, I can't think of a single thing he did. Cunha, apart from the first 10 minutes, terrible. Bruno Fernandes.
I disagree on Cunha.
Terrible.
Cunha was dangerous. I disagree there.
But he went away, Russ. And I think that the idea that Ruben Amorim is going to turn around this team, that let's remember, Russ, they finished 15th in the league. Fulham finished above them. Based on the coverage, you would have thought Fulham had finished below them. No, Fulham is a better team than United, and I think we should have won the match.
Okay. I'm going to share my initial reaction. I'm just going to share some comments from Stefan, who's joining us to watch this live. Cheated of 3 points. Stefan, we're going to make that argument because I'm not going to disagree with you on what happened there because honestly, that goal shouldn't have counted. So if you're going to go there and then Max is going to make the argument for their penalty, I'm a little bit different on that. But I think that, listen, I think Fulham should have won the match. I thought overall, Max, my initial reaction, Fulham were the better side for 90 plus minutes. That's the way I'm looking at it. I was watching throughout the match and I'm thinking, because I like to be fair here. And I want to say that Manchester United looked a little bit different to start the match. They were very energetic. I'd heard about this in the Arsenal match. They were, I would say, very good for the first 15 minutes and really creating some good opportunities for themselves. But Fulham grew into the match, Max. They completely grew into the match. If you look at the possession stats, I believe they're fairly even. Fulham had more corners. Fulham were creating more opportunities. And I'm going to tell you the biggest bonus to come out of this match. Fulham were dangerous off of set pieces. That's a bonus to come out of this. Now, I know Manchester United are not very good at covering set pieces defensively, right? But, Max, I'll just go right to you right now. I want to talk about the set piece deliveries. I thought they were very good.
The set piece deliveries are excellent. We should have had, 3 goals. Let's be honest, Russ. Rodrigo Muniz misses a wide open goal at the end of the first half.
Yep.
I don't know how he missed that. Second half, Joachim Andersen turns his back to the ball and actually misses the ball completely again, which would have been another goal.
Right.
The Man United keeper was just terrible. The Man United keeper on corners reminded me of Sergio Rico for the Fulham fans out there. Just completely
Sergio, wow, we're going back.
Lost in the box. And I think that gave us confidence, Russ. Any ball that was put that made Baindir in any sort of difficulty, you just knew he'd have no chance. He'd flap at it. So yeah, I think I gave it confidence to put the balls in the box. But again, we had really strong opportunities that I think honestly we weren't clinical. And from the set pieces, I think we should have got 2 clear-cut goals, the ones I just mentioned, and perhaps even more.
We certainly had our opportunities, Max, and I guess it's a double-edged sword, because here I am talking about how good the deliveries from set pieces were, but Fulham were not clinical enough. There was one opportunity off of set piece where I believe it was Rodrigo Muniz. He should have scored. You probably already talked about that. There were opportunities here. So there are some good, there are some bad, and dare I say there's some ugly. And that the ugly part I'm going to put on when we talk a little bit about Chris Kavanagh. I didn't want to talk about him before the match because so many were talking about who the referee was. Max, he played a role in this match. We'll get to that in just a bit. But let's just talk about the first half. And I'll start us off by saying, Stefan already said probably for about the first 20 minutes, we'll give it to Manchester United. We'll give it to them, right? They looked like a team on the rise. If you're just looking at a snapshot at the very early stages of this match. But I kept saying to myself, if Fulham could weather the storm, Max, then they have every chance not just to get something out of it, but win the match. And that's kind of how it all played out. They grew into the match. They started creating more opportunities. I think they played with more confidence. In the beginning stages, I think it took them, I'm talking about Fulham, time to adjust to the press, Max. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought we were asleep out of the blocks, and United pressed us really well. Yeah, as I mentioned, Cooney hit the post, unlucky not to score, and he had the shot just before that from 25, 30 yards that just went over. And then Anderson lost him on a long ball later in the first half, and another great save by Leno. So United just looked really strong, and we looked weak. And I think Josh King took a while to settle in. I think he wasn't quite up to pace yet in that first 15, 20 minutes, gave away the ball, was out-muscled. And I think it was interesting how he started with Castagna right wing and Tete behind him.
Yep.
United took advantage a little bit of that. And the gap between Tete and Anderson, that back three we were playing, a lot of balls were played in there. I thought Anderson, I think he finished the game really well, but again, seemed a bit slow, just not quick to react sometimes. And United were getting a lot of joy down that flank. So, I want to give United credit for how they started, but after 15, 20 minutes, they didn't score. The game settled into a lull, and then Fulham started to grow into it.
So I agree with all that. And I want to just touch a little bit more on the formation, because I think that played a role in why Fulham started so slowly. I think the players were taking a little bit to adjust to how that they were going to play this match, and obviously the aggressiveness of Manchester United. But at some point, it settled down. But we'll talk about in the second half, because I think the substitutions changed the match again, Max. But do you think that it was the right call for Marco to go with that starting 11 in that formation?
I think no. I think we should have started Harry Wilson.
Because that's Harry Wilson made a difference when he came on. The substitutions made a difference in the second half.
I just thought it was strange to have Castagna playing right wing back. I just thought it was strange. I don't hate Timothy Castagna. I think he's a good squad player.
Yep.
But with the options we had, it didn't make sense. I think it was too defensive. And I think it gave United too much respect, honestly, because as you mentioned, as soon as you made those changes, suddenly we were the team who was asking the questions. And why didn't we just start that way? Also, I have to be honest, I don't think Rodrigo Muniz had a good game. I think this is a classic Rodrigo Muniz cycle where he comes off the bench and seems excellent. And everyone's saying, this is a guy who's going to play Champions League football. He's going to go to Atalanta. We got to do everything to keep Rodrigo Muniz. He's our number 9. And then he does well enough to earn a starting spot. And then he starts and we see, well, let's actually look. What did Rodrigo Muniz do for the 75 minutes he was on the pitch? Versus when Raul Jimenez came on, he changed the match. And I thought it was really bright. What Rodrigo Muniz did today was miss a wide open goal at the header, attempt a silly scissor kick, And that's about it. I don't think he gave us anything in build-up play or won any important headers in the box. Now, you could argue he wasn't utilized correctly, which maybe is a fair point to add, but I was not impressed by him from the start.
Okay.
So, again, this is a dilemma for Marco Silva.
Sure.
Who knows?
Okay, so I'm leaving this comment up from Stefan because I want to talk about this because I think it's interesting because I was thinking about this during the match. He writes, I liked where Iwobi started and where Cess played. What did you make of their performance? I thought Iwobi was bright.
Yeah, no, I'm going to disagree here. I think Iwobi was much better in the middle. I think when Iwobi played centrally at the end.
So you think when we made the change in the second half, it worked better?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was night and day when Marco made those changes. And it was credit to Marco for making the changes.
Okay, so again, this is from Stefan. He says, Castagna gave us the edge in defense, which we could not have with Wilson. That's a good point. It is only after the game developed that Wilson would have been useful. So his idea, maybe going along with why Marco did what he did, Max, is that the further the match went on, then you make this change. You play a little conservative in the first half, and the second half, you kind of take advantage of them by bringing on Wilson. I kind of go where Stefan's going on this.
I don't know. I think that's again giving United too much respect. If you ask me, you don't play that way against a team.
I do think
in the league. You
I want to say this
at home. You don't do that.
Okay, I think that they actually gave Manchester United a lot of respect, meaning how that they set up. There was a fear of.
That's what I'm saying. We gave them way too much respect. We gave them way too much respect, Russ. They don't deserve this respect. It's the same with the media. It's the same with the commentators. They treat Manchester United, a team which has been abysmal ever since Sir Alex Ferguson left the club, as some kind of legendary team. They're not like that anymore. They're a bottom half of the table team who's in the bottom six. When are people going to understand this?
Well, what's interesting, Max, and we've got several comments, and please, if you're watching live with us, keep the comments coming.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong, Russ?
No.
This team finished below us in the league table. They signed some big money players, and it hasn't changed a thing about Ruben Amorim, who I think is a fool.
Max, the big thing going into this match is that it actually played out the way that I thought it would. This team would be much better going forward and would be dangerous, but there'd be gaps in behind. And that totally is what happened. And in their midfield, we'd be able to take advantage of it. I think everything played out like that. So, yes, I think that Marco set us up to be a little bit more conservative and gave them more respect. I agree with that. I wouldn't have started. Now, maybe I was wrong. I wouldn't have started Lukic and Berger together, but they worked well. I was thinking of going with Max. This was before the match. I was thinking of having Smith Rowe and Josh King and Berger and leaving Lukic out, but Lukic played well. So who's the manager? He knows best.
No, that's a good point.
Say what you want. We're supporters, but I do think that he did give them too much respect. The way that we set up, the fear of Cunha, the fear of Embuemo. Maybe he thought Sesko was going to start from the beginning, which he didn't. Set basically them. I'm talking about our club to just be a little bit more defensive, and maybe in the second half open it up, which they did. I'm just going to share some comments. This is from Luke Walsh. He says, "Evening, fellas. Take the point, but we were the better team today." Listen, that's how we started the show. Totally agree, Luke. This is from Caleb Zansons. I like that. Iwobi was class. The new signings will have to earn their spots. Whenever that happens, when we do get new signings.
I was going to say, what new signings? The keeper, the Benjamin Lecomte?
Okay, this is also from Luke. We controlled Embuemo well. Yes. He's a dangerous player, but couldn't make anything work against us. So this goes to how Marco set us up. Because Embuemo, he worried me even more than Cunha. And Cunha was very dangerous. I was more worried about Embuemo. But honestly, he was taken care of throughout the match. He was not the danger man. It was actually Cunha for probably the first 20 or 25 minutes. And as you said, Max, as the match went on and maybe early on in the second half, he really didn't have an impact. So what Marco did, even though I was against the way that they set up, and you're talking about that they gave them too much respect, maybe there was a method to the madness. I'm not agreeing with it, but I think I understand where he was coming with that lineup and that formation.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I think the Mbuma point is great. This is a player who is very dangerous. When he was at Brentford, made a big money move. Again, I can't think of a single thing he did other than trip over Bassi and try to win a free kick.
Yep.
I can't think of anything he did today at all. Nothing.
All right. By the way, we will be talking about Chris Kavanagh coming up. I saw your comment, Brian. I will get to that when we talk about him. But as we talk about the first half, I want to get right to it. I want to talk about the as they would say in England, the controversy. We have to talk, Max, about the penalty. We can talk all about it because there's a good part of the penalty. It's what Bruno did, and because obviously he misses the penalty. But the bigger question is, and I'll ask everyone watching live, and I've watched it back many times, did Manchester United deserve a penalty? And on top of it, did they wait too long to make the call? Now, obviously, they had to wait until play stopped, so I get that somewhat. But we started to hear in the broadcast, did it take, 3 to 4 minutes before they made the call? And because play was still going on, I get that. But did they deserve a penalty, Max?
I disagree. I don't think it was a penalty. I think Mason Mount initiates a contact, and Mason Mount is weak.
Damien, by the way, is a Manchester United supporter, so keep that in mind.
And thank you, Damien, for listening, because we always love opposing clubs listening in, and we appreciate watching Cottage talk. And I understand there can be a disagreement on this. I think Mason Mount initiates contact, and then if you're weak, you're gonna tussle with Calvin Bassey. You're gonna get thrown to the ground in the box because Calvin Bassey says, "I don't want to deal with this tiny little Mason Mount who's going to annoy me. Let me move you aside." Was it too aggressive by Bassey? I think it was. I think if I'm being totally honest with myself, he puts too much into the shove. I think he could have done it in a more tactful way. But I still maintain it wasn't a penalty because Mason Mount is the one pushing him first. Second off, this is what Stefan and other people have said.
Yep.
Luke Shaw does the exact same thing to Rodrigo Muniz. The exact same thing.
I know.
Bowls him over and tackles him. Actually, not the exact same thing. I think it's more aggressive than what happened. And how the ref can look at that and just ignore it. To me, this is the issue with modern football, Russ. Once you introduce VAR into the game, every single thing gets hyper-analyzed up to a point. Because if we're going to hyper-analyze every single second of a football match, I understand you'll get some penalties in the box because of pushing and shoving.
Right.
In my perfect world, you let that stuff slide. That's football. You're going to get an altercation in the box. Players are going to go down. You let it play on. But if you're going to call this a penalty, then you have to apply the same standard to what happens when Manchester United are in attack. And when Lenny Yora puts both hands on Calvin Bassey for the goal and pushes him, right when Calvin Bassey's about to jump, again, it doesn't look like a lot because it's not. But that's all it takes is a little touch on a player before you're about to jump up in the air to put you off. How can you hyper-analyze when it's United's penalty and when it's a foul against United, you look away? That's a football fan's issue with VAR. It always seems to benefit the historically big sides because Manchester United are not a big side anymore, right? They finished 15th in the league. Historically big sides.
Well, again, we're going to get to that in more detail when we talk about the second half, and I'll be talking about Chris Kavanagh because, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I really don't like talking about this guy for obvious reasons, but when he plays a role in the match, which he did in use of VAR as well, we have to talk about it, and he did play a role. So, Max, let's before we talk about the second half, okay? So we get to the half. No, we forgot to mention, we have to mention the miss. So this was a terrible miss. Now, again, the broadcast we're watching is almost making excuses for Bruno because of Kavanagh. And I'm thinking, excuse my language, shut the F up. Because the coverage that we get in America, yes, Max and I are both Americans, and we get Peacock and we get NBC Sports, and it is heavily on the side of Manchester United. After the match, it was all Manchester United. It's all about them. So, fine. But the thing about it is, sorry, you have to score there. And if that gets in his head, so be it, because like we're talking about, you got to score there. You got to be mentally strong. And I don't care about his process. And I've heard all the excuses, Max. We heard all these excuses about why he missed it, right? He just missed it. Let it go. But no, they have to defend this guy. They have to put blame on it. How about that he just missed it? And then maybe he's not as mentally strong as people think.
I mean, Bruno Fernandes is one of the best players in the Premier League, in my opinion.
He is.
If he lets, and first of all, he's backing up, and the ref happens to be walking by. First of all, Bruno Fernandes isn't even looking behind him. So if he wants to get mad at the ref, I'm sorry, look at yourself. But again, back to what I was saying. I respect Bruno Fernandes a tremendous amount. He's a great footballer. He shouldn't be at Manchester United, frankly. He should be at a team playing Champions League football. He really should be. If he lets that get in his head, that makes no sense. He's someone I see as with a great mentality of a champion, a really top footballer.
Right.
If that little thing sets him off, that's first of all, it's hilarious. Second of all, I was screaming at the television, Leno, don't fall for it. He's going to do that hop skip thing. Because every single Bruno Fernandes penalty that I can ever remember, he runs up, he does a little jump, the keeper moves, and he passes in the net. For some reason, he tries to smash it and he puts it in Rose's head. It was hilarious, but I mean, I'm curious what you think about that, Russ.
Yep.
He didn't do what everyone thought he would do.
I thought he was going to do the hop skip.
Yeah.
He didn't do it.
It was an atrocious penalty. It reminded me of the penalties we had to watch as Fulham supporters during the 2020-21 season.
I can go farther back and talk about one that Tim Ream took, like in the championship. Remember that?
Yeah, to remove Sessegnon from getting a hat trick.
Yes. Yeah. So we've seen some terrible ones. So I'm not going to give them a pass, and I'm not going to give Bruno Fernandes a pass. I'm certainly not going to give NBC Sports their dues. Oh no, it's okay. It's Manchester United. F that crap. We're going to call it out. This is a Fulham show, not a Manchester United show. Anyways, before we talk about the second half, what were you thinking at halftime? I'm thinking this is even. I think it felt to me, and you tell me before we talk about the second half, I'm at halftime thinking they still have every chance to win this match because I felt that they grew into the match. I knew that they would make their changes, bringing on their big-time striker, but Fulham had the opportunity to change it, I thought, big time, and they did with Marco's changes. So I thought it was an even first half, Max, but I thought they had every chance of getting all 3 points going in the second half. What were you thinking at halftime?
I completely agree. I was thinking we just weathered the storm. The penalty miss, I think, changed momentum. Muniz had just had that free header, which he should have put in off the corner. Things were going better, and I was just thinking, hey, try not to concede early on in the second half. Keep this 0-0 as long as we can, then go all out final 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's just, listen, this whole thing, this match is in a way, it's funny because I had a coworker from work who's a Manchester United supporter, Max, and he's working right now. And he told me yesterday, Russ, it's going to be 1-1. I went on BBC World Service radio before the match. It was actually really nice to do. And they asked me my prediction. I said 3-1 to Fulham. So I got it wrong. But I felt confident going into it because of kind of the way it played out. If we were clinical, but you can make the argument that they could have scored 2 or 3 goals as well. But I thought we would be more clinical than we were, but I should know better from last season that we're not that clinical. But there is a silver lining to all of this, the 1-1 draw. One, there's someone else taking set-piece deliveries now, is actually doing the deliveries now, and it's not Andreas Pereira, likely to be gone, I think, from Fulham Football Club. And I thought Lukic did a nice job overall, Max. And that was one of the things I was thinking at halftime is like, it feels different with those deliveries. Now, a point that was made by the commentator was that Sessegnon should have been taking the other ones, that they should have been rotating on the corners. Well, what do you make of that?
I don't know. I mean, I think, people like having in-swingers, but if you have a set-piece taker and they're doing well, why change it? So I don't feel super strong about it. But you're right. I mean, listen, either it was Harry Wilson or Pereira taking set pieces for us. So both those players weren't on the pitch at the time.
Right. So this is from Stephen. At half, I thought that Fulham needed to change, and Marco did. I felt the same way too, Stefan, and I knew it would happen around the 60, 65th minute. And I knew that if Jedi came on, it was going to change a lot. I think that was a huge change. Obviously, Smith Rowe. I think all the changes made a big difference, Max. The big one for me was obviously the change with Robinson. And then you mentioned being able to move Iwobi centrally, because that actually really opened stuff up. So that was really positive as well. All right, let's go to the second half. And let's get to the goal from Manchester United. This one is actually very frustrating because I'll just ask the question. Should the goal have counted from Manchester United? The answer is absolutely not, Max. It should not have counted. Call it both ways. We've already talked about this. Let's talk about the goal, because two hands on Calvin Bassey. He goes down. It opens up the space, allowing the header that is then ricocheted in the back of the net off of Rodrigo Muniz. But it doesn't happen without the two hands.
I agree.
Never should have counted. Why
I agree.
can we not call it both ways? This, to me, is a Manchester United bias thing. I know people don't want to hear it. I don't even know if they looked at it with VAR.
That's the thing, is that the penalty which Bassey gave away was so incredibly hyperanalyzed. And then this goal just seems
Why is VAR not involved here?
Whatever. Yeah, and we won't get an explanation. We will not get an explanation. They'll explain away everything about why they gave the penalty. Chris Kavanagh went on the microphone and said, push by number 3 on number 7, so penalty, announced the entire stadium. Whereas this goal, which in my opinion, at the very least, have him look at it. You don't have to give it. You don't have to disallow the goal. But why not at least go to the monitor and look at it? Because this was the direct influence of the player who headed the ball, which went in the back of the net. You think you would want to take a look. I've already said a lot about this, so I don't want to go too in depth. But the other thing I'll say is it was equally as unfortunate because the header is going off target and it hits off Rodrigo Muniz's back. And deflects in. So I think Leno was wrong-footed, and it came at the worst time to concede because it was, 50 minutes, right at the start of the second half, right as Fulham thought they were going to come onto it. But to Marco Silva's credit, he reacted really well after the goal, and I thought the players reacted really well. And this is something we see a lot from Marco Silva's teams, right, is they do not just drop their heads. They keep going and they respond.
The team reacted and Marco reacted. So let's talk about this, because not only did I think it in some strange way, like I said, motivated is not the right word. Maybe it just put everything up a notch, but also the subs made a huge difference. I've already talked about them. Let's talk about them, Max. I want to get your thoughts on the players that came on. Obviously, we're going to talk about Smith Rowe coming up shortly. Jedi made a huge difference. You already talked about Raul. Harry Wilson made a difference. The substitutions changed the game.
100%. 100%. These players are hungry. And that's what I appreciate about Fulham. Smith Rowe, instant impact. Jimenez, similar way, making runs. A lot more bright than Muniz, which is weird because when you look at the striker profiles of Muniz versus Jimenez, you would think the younger striker would be more physical and get more involved in the game. And Jimenez, the older striker, would be less mobile. But actually, it was the opposite today. Jimenez was making runs in behind, linking up, dropping deep. He just seemed more like a willing player who wanted to get involved. So that was impressive. Yeah, Wilson, again, immediately dropping back, trying to influence play, trying to get the ball. You saw a number of times. And I thought as soon as he came on, Kenny Tete became 3 times better.
That's right.
I mean, Kenny Tete was probably the standout player of that final 15 minutes, combining 1-2s, getting to the byline. And remember that one play, Russ, when he literally slide tackled, I think, Dorgu, completely got the ball.
That's
and
right.
Then had five feet of space within the box. I mean, really aggressive. And what I loved about the way the subs played is that they kept United in their own half. It was so positive, so aggressive. They didn't just lay off. As soon as there was a clearance, they got the ball back and we pushed on.
And that's what's great. And let's talk about the equalizer from Smith Rowe, because here is a player, huge high price tag, right? And I have gone on the record on this show, and Tony has said the same thing, that we believe that this is going to be his season, that now we're going to see truly the Smith Rowe that Fulham hoped that they would get from Arsenal. Obviously, there's a lot to see if that's going to be true, but this is a good sign. And you already mentioned, I actually think Josh King starting is pushing Smith Rowe. I think this is a good problem to have. And I think at some point we're going to see them play together. I would love to see them play together. So I want to see what that looks like. But Smith Rowe gets the equalizer, and this is a great goal, Max. I know it. He basically just puts his foot out, but it's more than that.
It is more than that. It's the anticipation. It's the willingness to take a gamble. I also got to give credit to Iwobi with a really good ball from Iwobi. And Jimenez too, he contests it. And I think because Jimenez tries to get to it, it leads to uncertainty in the box because players don't know where the ball is going to go. And ESR has that killer instinct to get in the box. And actually last season, as critical as I was of Emil Smith-Rowe, he came up with a lot of really big goals. Comes to mind, away at Palace,
Here's another
home
one.
to Leicester, away to Leicester. For all the criticism he came under, he actually popped up with a decent tally. And I think that's something we're going to have to, grapple with is, are we too critical of him?
Sure.
Because some matches he will go missing, but other matches he'll be the match winner. And hopefully this is going to kickstart his season. Josh King played, I think, pretty well. Let's remember he almost had a goal when he got put through by Sessegnon. He had a great flick to go behind Lenny Yoro.
101. Yeah.
There are a couple of moments where I thought, as a commentator said, he just thinks he has more time than he does. And his frame physically just looks really underdeveloped compared to the other players, which is understandable because he's only 18. He'll grow, he'll get quicker, get faster. I think maybe we'll see Smith-Rowe start and Josh King coming off the bench in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Well, we shall see. But I will say that maybe we saw some growing pains, but that's not to be critical of Josh King. I think that's just natural.
Yeah.
When it comes to a player, as they were saying, the announcers were saying, stepping up from where he played last season to now playing the Premier League, he can't get away with things that he could get away with last season, and he'll adjust to that. And definitely you will see that. And I agree with the decision to start him. I actually disagree with you, Max. I would continue to start Josh King. At some point, I would like to see, like I said, the two of them playing together from the get-go. I don't think it's going to be against Chelsea. We'll see what Marco decides to do, but I was very happy with Smith-Rowe, and I think that Josh King did a job, and he will learn from what happened today. It's all good because I think he's going to be a tremendous player. I think we'll all agree with that. All right, my friend. Before we go to man of the match to end the show, we have to talk about a couple things. We could talk about how the match ended, but I definitely want to follow back and talk about Chris Kavanagh. And Fulham have a very bad history with this guy. And when I saw announced that he was going to be the ref for this match, I kind of just shrugged him off. What are you going to do, right? He played a role in this match, Max. Like I said, play it both ways. Don't just call it for Manchester United. And in the beginning of the match, he was letting everything go. I don't know if you noticed this, but there were some fouls that were definitely fouls on Fulham players, and he was letting it go left and right. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? That you would see often called, and he would let go. He'd let go. And then next you know, Manchester United are going up the pitch. So do you agree with me that he played a role in this match?
100%. The other thing that comes to mind is when Lenny Yoro went slide tackling studs up on Sander Berge right in the middle of the pitch, and everyone stopped expecting a foul.
Yep.
And Kavanagh just waves play on. So I don't like to come in here and talk about the refereeing because I find the football itself is worth our time far more than the officiating, but the officiating was awful, just awful. And it's this kind of stuff. We don't want to sound like conspiracy theorists here, but when we play United and this guy Kavanagh gets selected and the calls, which any neutral watching can say, well, that definitely favored Manchester United. It gets really demoralizing. And I do want to say, though, Chris Kavanagh was awful, 100%.
Yep.
But the video assistant referee also deserves a lot of blame because, yes, Chris Kavanagh gave the penalty, but Chris Kavanagh was not even asked, was not even requested to review the Lenny Yoro push on Calvin Bassey. And we can't blame Kavanagh for something he didn't even get asked to do. So let's also shift the blame to whoever is sitting up there in Stockley Park or whatever.
No, I agree.
You have to at least request the referee take a look.
Well,
But of course, it was a Manchester United goal, so we got to move on as quickly as possible. That's the worst part of VAR, Russ, is it feels like whenever there's a decision which goes against the team you're supporting, they're analyzing it for minutes and they're looking at every single different camera position. But when it's a decision that could maybe save the team we support, plays kicking off. Let's get back on with the match. It always seems to move at drastically different paces.
And what's interesting about it, and I'm glad that Stefan mentioned this. Listen, I'm one that wants VAR, but there are serious flaws with VAR. I'm not going to lie about that. But what was just irritating, and it had to be irritating for everyone at Craven Cottage, is that the match goes on, and all of a sudden we're hearing on our broadcast, Max, because they might not be aware of this at Craven Cottage. I don't know that Stockley Park is looking at a potential penalty. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And it's minutes, right? It's minutes. And you think you can't, and I looked at it and I'm like, my first thought was Fulham are there's going to be a penalty here. And it turned out to be that way. But like you said, the minute Kavanaugh went to the monitor, I'm thinking it's going to be, but for one little second, when he went to make the decision, I just had to and basically describe it. I'm like, oh, he's going to tell us that it's not a penalty, but no, I was wrong. I was totally wrong. I convinced myself that he was just going to say that it wasn't a penalty, but it was, and we move on. And this is one of the reasons why I think Fulham deserved to win the match. I thought they were the better side over 90 plus minutes. I can't get past that. This isn't me whining. It's watching the match with my own eyes. If Manchester United, Max, were the better team, I come on the show, you've been on this many times, I would say Fulham were dreadful, Fulham were terrible. They deserved to lose this match. I'm not going to say that watching this match. What I watched was a Fulham performance that deserved 3 points. That's just me calling it the way I see it. All right. Coming up next to end the episode, if you're watching live, feel free to share your thoughts on it. Max and I will share who we thought was man of the match. All right, Max, let's get to talking about man of the match. And what's interesting, like I said, if you're watching live and want to share who you thought was man of the match, definitely want your comments on this. So I think that there are a few places where you could go. Bernd Leno comes to mind. Bernd Leno had some key saves, Max. Where do you go with man of the match?
This is a difficult one. I'm not going to lie. I'm going through 3 to 4 players in my head who could deserve it. The name that keeps coming back to me, though, is Kenny Tete.
Okay.
Even though I don't think he had the best crossing. I just thought the way he dominated play in the end of the match and just was our main attacking outlet, I really want to give it to him, and I thought he was pretty solid defensively too. So I'm going to say Kenny Tete. Honorable mention for Emil Smith-Rowe for the goal.
Okay. So I'm just going to share a couple comments from Stefan. He just says, let us not forget the save by Leno, who kept Cunha out, made a big difference. We would have been 2 down, and I mentioned that at the beginning, Stefan. You are right, because Cunha could have put them up 2-0. There's no question about that. Man of the match, Iwobi. I think Iwobi had a great match. You and I disagree in the first half, but I thought Iwobi. I'm going to go with Stefan. I'm going to say Iwobi. Chris Goodwin says ESR the savior of Fulham. I don't know. I hope he is, Chris, but I'm going to go with Iwobi. But I definitely want to mention this. Brian says Tete, so it goes along with what you said. Leno, like I said, there's some good shouts here. I wouldn't, and again, I'm just thinking about some of the performances. What did you make of the guys in the middle before we go? What did you make of the jobs of Berg and Lukic? What do you mean? What do you make of their performance?
I thought Lukic was very good. I think Lukic, they actually gave him a lot of space at the edge of the box because they thought he wasn't exactly a threat for an attacking sense, which is interesting.
And Berger just shoot, though. We need Berger to shoot.
It's like that's the same thing I was thinking. I was like, this
he's getting in all these situations.
Have a shot.
Just shoot. For the love of just shoot.
I think they were both solid.
Yep.
But when I look at this team, and I was saying this watching a match with my family, I was saying we need a proper number 8. We need a proper central midfielder who can go box to box, who can defend and become a goal threat. Because Sasha Lukic and Sander Berger are very, I think, solid defensively, and they have a good passing range. But as you said, they're not feared as goal scorers. And
No,
if we just add a
it's
player to
hurting
our
Fulham.
team who could
It's hurting
contribute
Fulham.
goals, totally agree.
Yep.
So that's my thoughts on it. But again, I thought they played pretty well. And at the end of the match, I think Lukic and Berger both had a number of tackles where they kept the ball in the United area, and that was just really impressive to me.
Okay, we can talk about this on another show, but since we're talking about Berger and Lukic and why I am obsessed with only one playing, but maybe against opponents like Manchester United, you have to play both of them. But if you're playing, I'll give an example. When we played Burnley, how about playing Berger and then playing Smith Rowe and Josh King together? How about trying that? But I agree with you that even if you play, say, Smith Rowe as a number 8, he's not really going to help you defensively. He's only going to help you going forward. So they need that true number 8, which is a box-to-box that can do everything. They don't really have that, Max. It's actually a good point. They have, like, Lukic, who's more of a 6, but not really. I mean, they're both not really 6s or 8s. They're kind of tweeners, right? No, I'm serious. They're not. Neither one are 6s. Neither one's are 8s.
No, you're totally right.
But they're playing these roles out of necessity. And I think that, in the end, hurts Fulham going forward and defensively a little bit. So, I'm getting on a roll talking about the negatives, which I never like to do. But anyways, Max, let's wrap this up. This has been a great show. Give me your final thoughts before we go.
Final thoughts: undefeated in the Premier League, 2 1-1 draws in a row. The Invincibles were coming for you. And let's see, going to Chelsea, who are the most informed team in the league, who are scoring tons of goals. Yep. Let's see what happens at the Bridge.
Okay. All right. I cannot wait for that match against Chelsea. We'll see what happens. And, of course, we have a Carabao Cup, as Giannis would say, the Moose Cup. We have the Moose Cup coming up against Bristol City. That'll be interesting to see who Marco decides to play, because you can't really put out a really strong side against Bristol City, because you got a match on Saturday. That's early, too, by the way. It's very early, which doesn't make things easier. Anyways, good stuff. But it is time to wrap this up. For Max Cohen, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage.